So, many of you will be aware that Nurse Dr. John Campbell is one of the leading critics of the COVID vaccine since everybody had already taken it. But back before everyone had been forced to take it, when it really sort of mattered, what was Nurse Dr. John Campbell up to then? Because I got this clip here when Nurse Dr. John Campbell is invited onto the mainstream media, which, as we all know, truly is a sign of a true dissident. If you're being invited onto the mainstream media, you really are persona non grata when it comes to the establishment, etc., etc. So he's invited onto the mainstream media to discuss mandatory vaccinations for medical staff, which many of you will be aware is a violation of human rights. It's against the Nuremberg Code. It's an absolute abomination in the eyes of the Lord and in the eyes of decent human beings. And as you can see from the thumbnail, Nurse Dr. John Campbell is absolutely furious about this, and he's ready to let rip. And a lot of people see this guy as some sort of COVID hero, and he's the good doctor, and even though he's a nurse. And, so I just thought it'd be worthwhile, because I give this guy a hard time. I thought it'd be worthwhile to sort of go back and see. Let's just see how much of a hero he really was at the time when it matters. Okay? Let's have a look.
And for more now, I want to bring in healthcare analyst Dr. John Campbell. He joins me tonight from Carlisle in the UK. Dr. Campbell, it's good to see you again. Let's start with France and Greece. They are making coronavirus vaccinations mandatory for all healthcare workers.
Oh, well, good morning. Oh, I can't believe that they're thinking about doing that. Oh, you've got such a mainstream media voice that I can't even probably understand what you're saying. Why do they make these people talk like this? Does anyone have any idea?
Like, this guy doesn't even sound like a recognizable human. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, good morning. I've got Dr. John Campbell here. John, tell us a little bit.
Talk to me about why this is necessary.
Big mistake, buddy. Huge mistake. You have any idea what you've just done, buddy? You just invited on one of the top nurse doctors in the country, okay, who is an absolute a champion of truth and justice, and you've just asked him why mandatory vaccines is a good idea. Prepare to die.
Well, because these patients are at risk and healthcare workers can pass the virus on to their patients. And we now know quite definitively from data in the UK that people that are vaccinated are 50% less likely to get the virus in the first place. And if they do get it, they're 50% less likely to pass it on.
It's coming. It's coming. Hang on. Wait a second. He's good. The old rope-a-dope, man. He's pretending to be an establishment lackey, get this guy offside. Now he's going to hit him with the real outrage. Ready?
So we're talking about a 75% level of protection here. So there's a pretty good medical rationale for this.
So there's a good medical rationale for it. First of all, everything John Campbell just said is a complete demonstrable lie, and he'll now tell you this himself. He'll now go on his own channel and be like, wow, the people who said this vaccine was great, they're crazy. Well, he was one of the main ones, right? But basically what he's saying is there's a 50% chance that the vaccine might do something, and there's a 50% chance after that that might matter. So there is every reason to force people to have an experimental medical procedure that could kill or injure them for the rest of their life if they want to keep their job. It's all good with John Campbell. That's fine. This is who John Campbell is when it matters. This is who John Campbell is when people's backs are against the wall, when people who work in care homes, when the good, kind people who look after other people for a living, when they were threatened with their jobs unless they took an experimental medical procedure. This is where John Campbell was. He was on the mainstream media saying this is all fine, this is perfectly acceptable because there's a 50% chance the vaccine might do something. So this is all good.
Is there an ethical rationale for not making the vaccines compulsory? I'm thinking of the German Chancellor Angela Merkel. She says that there's no need right now to make the vaccinations mandatory.
How has the human reptile got to this first? It takes the mainstream media host to say, hey, but John, is there any Is there any sort of way in which forcing people to have a medical procedure might be wrong? And then John, all the way through, John Campbell's like, yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. The complete opposite of what I just said. Yep, Oh, he's just chomping at the bit to say, yeah, please let me come in on the point that you just made. I'm ready to go. Now that I've sort of just opened the way for medical tyranny, now that I've sort of said that it's all good for people to be forced to be vaccinated, let me now just appear really keen to get on the other side of the 8 ball now, please.
That there's no need right now to make the vaccinations mandatory.
This is a good debate, and of course, and you'll get lots of different opinions from different ethicists.
Do you see exactly who this snake is? Oh, this is a good debate. And you'll get many different opinions from many ethicists using these poncy words. It's not a good debate, is it? It's not a good debate at all. Should people be forced to have an experimental medical procedure or they lose their job? Well, it's a good debate. No, it isn't. No, it isn't a good debate. It's wrong. On every level, it was wrong then. It's wrong now. But when there was a chance to do something about it, Nurse Dr. John Campbell was the guy the mainstream media wheeled out to essentially say what they want him to say, but at the same time come across like he's some kind of objective truth warrior, which of course he isn't.
It's a fundamental principle in healthcare that we must give informed consent for everything that we do. So I can't even take a patient's blood pressure without their informed consent that they allow me to do that.
Right, so if you know that, how can you, in any honest way, take the position that you just took, which is making excuses for mandatory vaccinations? Oh yeah, you must have informed consent, but it's absolutely fine to tell someone, unless you have this experimental medical procedure, we're going to take away your ability to feed yourself.
So it's perfectly reasonable that everyone has the choice what medications or vaccines they get. That's a basic human right. But there again, employers have a duty of care. They have a duty of care to their employers, who they have to maintain health of, and they also have a duty of care towards the patients for whom their employees are looking after.
Do you see the way what Dr. John Campbell, excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't use his proper title. What Nurse Dr. John Campbell is doing here is, under the disguise of, I'm here to be objective and play both sides of the argument, what he's doing is he's taking something which is definitely wrong and opening up the door to maybe it's right. You know, by saying, well, yeah, it's your human right to not have somebody forcibly inject poison into your arm, but isn't it also really unsafe for people that you're around to be around you if you haven't had this, because there's a 50% chance it might do something? Do you see how that's a strange position to take?
So it's balancing this risk between informed consent and the duty of care that employers and individual clinicians have.
Do you see the deception? It's balancing the risk between informed consent. Wait a second, John. By your own admission, everybody has the right. You can't even take someone's blood pressure without them saying so, remember? So it's not balancing a risk of informed consent. That is a basic human right that everyone has. There's no balance of risk here. You can't do that. It's wrong. But what John is really doing here is taking something that's definitely wrong and saying, oh, but let's just weigh it up against this other imagined and created fear that Nurse Dr. John Campbell has been a part of for several years, and sort of maybe see if we can get people to agree to start taking away people's informed consent.
And of course, Hippocrates, the first doctor who's documented, said first do no harm. So it is incumbent on all healthcare workers not to do harm.
There's a lot of
the absolute balls on this guy finishing with that quote after he opens the door to mandatory vaccinations for people that work in care homes. Mandatory. That is basically a form of violence against these employees. They're in a different kind of way. They're strapping you to the chair and forcing this stuff into your body by saying, unless you let us do this, you're fired. You can't feed your family.
Talk right now too about whether or not societies will reach herd immunity. Is it even realistic to have that as a goal at this point, considering that there is vaccine hesitancy as well?
There's not enough people getting vaccinated generally in the world.
Dr. John Campbell, vaccine hero. This is who he was when it matters. There's not enough people getting vaccinated in the world. He will now, in all seriousness, he'll cut all these videos on his channel where he gets out a piece of paper and he goes, oh, this is troubling. This is troubling, this is. Or it looks like the vaccine's causing some myocarditis, and he'll underline myocarditis and be like, oh, look, all these people have had their arms and legs fallen off because of people like me. Oh, that's nasty. You know? And pretend like he's on your side. It's incredible, this guy.
But very often this is due to lack of vaccine supply, and as this is increased, then the level of immunity due to vaccinations will also increase. And especially in the UK at the moment, as you've probably heard, we're going to have these release of the legal restrictions. There's going to be a lot more cases. Cases in the UK could well go up to 100,000 per day. That is not impossible, and that means a lot of people are going to be exposed to the virus. So there's going to be a lot more natural immunity. And people that have been vaccinated, when they're exposed to the virus, being exposed to the virus will give them an extra booster of immunity as well, as if they've got a booster dose of vaccine. So overall immunity, community immunity, herd immunity, if you want to call it that, is increasing, but we're not there yet. It's probably going to be around about the 95% mark because this Delta variant is so transmissible.
Literally everything out of this guy's mouth when it mattered is vaccines are great, get more vaccines. Oh, if you've had the vaccine and then you get the virus, you're going to be given a boost as though you'd have a booster. So the underlying connotations of boosters are good, vaccines are good, you know, informed consent is kind of a risk. Informed consent is a risk. Nurse Dr. John Campbell, 2021 or whenever this was. You know, this is who this guy was when it mattered. You know, you can't take this guy seriously now. You literally, it is far too late for people like Nurse Dr. John Campbell to turn around after the way they behaved to care worker staff when it mattered. It's far too late to now turn around, look at all the harm that people like you have done and be like, oh, by gum, that's bad. And people say, oh, he was duped. The science changed. Science doesn't change. There was never any credible information that showed that these vaccines were safe. There was never any credible information that shows that these vaccines work. Okay, there was never any. So it's impossible for him to have been duped. Okay. Also, somebody who listened to Nurse Dr. John Campbell at the time, got the vaccine, and then got ill. That person was duped. Okay. Nurse Dr. John Campbell is the dupee. He's the person out there causing others to stumble, in my opinion. And people actually, you know, they back this guy. They back this guy. They think he's on their team. I'm going to keep doing these videos. There's a whole back catalogue that John Campbell hasn't deleted yet, so you can see who he really is and who he will be when it comes to the next one, by the way. Thanks a lot. Links are in the description if you want to support this channel. And yeah, have a nice day. And yeah, I'm Tim Pool now. I wear beanies. Take that.